Aunt Susan's voice tore through the silence, like a serrated knife. Grandpa may have been blind to your manipulations, but the rest of us aren't. Pack your things and get out, now. I stood in the middle of the grand living room, the same one where Grandpa had once told me stories of his childhood, my feet rooted to the floor like they'd grown into the polished oak beneath me. My throat felt dry, and my palms were damp with sweat. They couldn't be serious. "This is my home," I said, my voice trembling, though I fought to keep it steady. "Grandpa promised he wrote in his will." Aunt Susan sneered, her perfectly manicured nails tapping on the back of the leather armchair. "Oh, sweetie, did you think we'd let a nobody like you get your hands on his legacy? You're not even family. Grandpa's real grandchildren deserve this. Not some stray he felt sorry for." The words hit like a punch to the gut. My vision blurred for a moment, but I refused to cry. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. Cousin Mark, leaning against the marble fireplace, chuckled under his breath. "Honestly, it's pathetic. Grandpa's gone, and it's time you learn your place. You're just a squatter." I looked at each of them, Susan, Mark, Lisa, and even Uncle Harold, who stayed silent but didn't meet my eyes. Their expressions were a mix of disdain and smug superiority, as though I were something beneath them, something disposable. "Where am I supposed to go?" I asked, my voice cracking despite my best efforts. "Not our problem," Susan said with a shrug. "There's a perfectly good sidewalk outside. Now, don't make this harder than it needs to be." Before I could argue, Mark stepped forward, grabbing the small duffel bag I'd managed to pack. He shoved it into my arms and practically pushed me toward the front door. "Good riddance," he muttered, his breath hot on my ear. The cold night air slapped me in the face as they shut the heavy oak door behind me. The lock clicked, sealing away not just my home but every memory, every promise Grandpa had ever made to me. For a moment, I just stood there on the porch, the weight of the betrayal pressing down on my chest. My breath came in ragged gasps, the sharp winter air stinging my lungs. I glanced down at the bag in my hands. It wasn't much. A few clothes, an old photo album Grandpa had given me, and a couple of keepsakes I'd managed to grab before they shoved me out. This wasn't just unfair, it was cruel. Grandpa had always been my rock, my family, when no one else wanted me. And now, everything he'd worked for, everything he wanted for me, was stolen by the very people he'd trusted most. But if they thought I'd walk away quietly, they were wrong. The street was dark, illuminated only by the faint glow of the streetlights lining the long driveway. I stood on the edge of the estate, shivering as the wind bit through my thin jacket. It felt surreal, a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to turn around, pound on the door, and demand justice. But what good would it do? They held all the power now. I walked, my feet crunching over the gravel path that led away from the mansion, each step heavier than the last. By the time I reached the main road, tears blurred my vision. I tried to hold them back, to keep my composure, but the weight of everything was too much. Grandpa was gone, and now I was completely alone. As I sat on the curb, hugging the duffel bag to my chest, I couldn't help but replay the past few weeks in my head. Grandpa's funeral had been a circus of false tears and fake smiles. My so-called family had shown up in their designer clothes, shedding crocodile tears for the man who had always been too good for them. I had stayed by his bedside in his final days, holding his hand as he told me stories, as he reassured me that everything would be okay. "Don't let them push you around, Mia," he had said, his voice weak but steady. "You're stronger than all of them combined. This house, my legacy, it's yours. Don't let anyone take that away from you." But they had. The fire of anger began to burn inside me, pushing back the cold and despair. They had stolen everything, and they thought they could get away with it. They thought I was weak, that I'd just disappear and let them enjoy the life they didn't deserve. They were wrong. Morning came, but it brought little relief. I hadn't slept. I spent the night at a 24-hour diner, nursing a cup of coffee I couldn't afford and trying to figure out what to do next. The waitress, a kind woman named Clara, noticed my red eyes and trembling hands. She slid a plate of toast in front of me. "On the house, honey." You look like you've had a rough night. I nodded, barely able to mumble a thank you. The gesture, small as it was, warmed me more than the coffee. Clara lingered, her kind eyes studying me. You look like you've got a story to tell. I hesitated. Trust didn't come easily, especially now. But there was something about her demeanor that made me open up. I told her everything. The inheritance, the betrayal, the lies. She listened without interrupting, her expression shifting between sympathy and anger. When I finished, she leaned in closer. Listen, sweetie. People like that? They think they're untouchable. But trust me, everyone's got a weakness. You just have to find it. Her words stuck with me as I left the diner, her parting gift of a warm sandwich tucked into my bag. I didn't know how yet, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let them win. The next step was survival. I couldn't focus on revenge if I didn't have a roof over my head or food in my stomach. I found a cheap motel on the outskirts of town, the kind where the carpets smelled like mildew and the walls were paper thin. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I took inventory of what little I had left, a few clothes, Grandpa's photo album, a couple $100 I'd managed to save from my part-time job, and the letter Grandpa had left me. The letter. I unfolded it carefully, the familiar scrawl of his handwriting making my chest ache.
Mia.
If you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I want you to know how proud I am of you. You've faced more hardship in your young life than most people see in a lifetime, and yet you've come out stronger. I know my family will try to take what's yours. I've done what I can to ensure they don't succeed, but if they do, don't give up. Fight for what's rightfully yours. You have the strength, Mia. Never forget that. Love.
Grandpa.
Tears streamed down my face as I read the words, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of determination. Grandpa believed in me, even when no one else did. I wasn't going to let him down. I needed help, someone who could guide me in this fight. Grandpa's lawyer, Mr. Collins, was the logical choice. He had been a close friend of Grandpa's and handled all his legal affairs. If anyone could help me, it was him. I made my way to his office, clutching the letter tightly in my hand. When I arrived, his secretary gave me a doubtful look, but led me inside. Mr. Collins looked up from his desk, his expression softening when he saw me. Mia, he said, standing up to shake my hand. I was wondering when I'd hear from you. His words caught me off guard. You were expecting me? He nodded, gesturing for me to sit. Your grandfather told me you'd come if something went wrong. He was worried about the rest of the family. Said they'd try to pull something underhanded. I handed him the letter, and he read it carefully, his expression growing darker with each line. This changes everything, he said, setting it down. The will is clear, but it sounds like they've already taken steps to circumvent it. What can we do? I asked, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. Mr. Collins leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful look on his face. We're going to fight, Mia. But first, we need to find out exactly what they've done. And I have a feeling it's worse than you think. Over the next week, Mr. Collins and I worked together to uncover the full extent of my family's betrayal. As it turned out, they hadn't just lied about the will. They'd forged documents, falsified signatures, and even bribed officials to transfer Grandpa's assets into their names. Collins wasn't just angry. He was furious. This is criminal, Mia, he said, flipping through the stack of fraudulent papers we'd uncovered. They didn't just sidestep the will, they broke the law. This is beyond inheritance theft. This is fraud, plain and simple. Hearing those words gave me a strange sense of relief. For so long, I had felt powerless, as though their actions were a reflection of my worthlessness. But now, with every lie we exposed, I felt stronger. I wasn't crazy and I wasn't weak. They had wronged me, and now I had proof. But proof wasn't enough. Not yet. Mr. Collins explained the plan. We'll take this to court, but we need to be strategic. Your family has money and connections, and they'll use every resource they have to fight us. We need to hit them where it hurts. He wasn't exaggerating. My aunt and cousins had always used their wealth as a shield, buying their way out of trouble and manipulating situations to their advantage. If we were going to take them down, we had to play their game, but better. Collins suggested hiring a private investigator to dig deeper into their dealings. If they're willing to forge documents for this, there's no telling what else they've done. We need leverage. Leverage. The words sent a chill down my spine, but I nodded. If this was the only way to get justice, I was ready. Enter Jack Donovan, a grizzled PI with a no-nonsense attitude and a sharp eye for detail. When Collins introduced us, Jack gave me a once-over and said, "You've got guts, kid. Taking on a family like yours isn't for the faint of heart." "I don't have a choice," I replied. Jack smirked. "Good answer. Let's get to work." Over the next several weeks, Jack uncovered more dirt than I ever thought possible. My aunt had embezzled money from one of Grandpa's charities, Mark had been involved in an illegal business deal, and Lisa, sweet, seemingly innocent Lisa, had forged her college degree to land a high-paying job. "They're a regular den of vipers," Jack said, handing me a file packed with evidence. "This is enough to ruin them. Question is, are you ready to pull the triggers?" I didn't hesitate. Absolutely. With the evidence in hand, we launched the first strike, a legal notice demanding the return of Grandpa's estate and assets. The notice was ironclad, outlining every piece of evidence we had against them. It wasn't just a demand. It was a warning. The response came quickly. Aunt Susan called me, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Mia, darling, this is all a misunderstanding. Let's sit down and talk about this like family." "Family?" I spat. "You kicked me out of my home and stole everything Grandpa left me. Don't you dare use that word with me." Her tone shifted, growing colder. "You're making a big mistake, Mia. You have no idea who you're dealing with." "Oh, I know exactly who I'm dealing with," I said. "And I'm not afraid of you." The day of the court hearing arrived faster than I expected. The tension in the air was palpable as we entered the courtroom. My family sat on one side, their smug confidence radiating off them like a toxic cloud. I sat with Collins, my heart pounding but my resolve unshaken. The judge listened as Collins presented our case, laying out the evidence with meticulous precision. The forged documents, the fraudulent transactions, the bribes, it was all there, clear as day. When it was their turn, Aunt Susan's lawyer tried to spin a tale of family misunderstandings and miscommunications. But it was weak, and the judge wasn't buying it. As the hearing continued, I noticed something I hadn't expected: fear. For the first time, I saw cracks in their facade. Mark's leg bounced nervously under the table, and Susan kept whispering frantically to her lawyer. They knew they were losing. After what felt like an eternity, the judge delivered the verdict. My family's fraudulent actions were undeniable, and the court ordered the immediate return of all assets to me. In addition, they were fined heavily for their crimes, and the judge referred the case for further criminal investigation. The courtroom erupted into chaos. Susan screamed about appeals, Mark cursed under his breath, and Lisa burst into tears. But I didn't care. For the first time in weeks, I felt free. As I walked out of the courtroom, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Justice had been served, but I knew this wasn't the end. My family wasn't going to give up that easily, and I wasn't about to let my guard down. The victory in court was just the beginning. The scandal made headlines, and my family's reputation crumbled. Mark lost his job, Lisa's fake degree was exposed, and Aunt Susan became a social pariah. But instead of feeling satisfied, I felt conflicted. Revenge had been sweet, but it hadn't erased the pain they caused. The news spread like wildfire. Headlines screamed about the inheritance scandal and my family's criminal actions. Their faces were plastered across tabloids, and reporters camped outside their homes, eager for a soundbite. It was poetic justice. These were the same people who had paraded their wealth and status for years, using it to crush anyone they deemed beneath them. Now they were the ones being ridiculed and scrutinized. Despite the victory, I felt uneasy. The house was mine again, but stepping back inside felt different. The grand entryway no longer felt welcoming. The silence wasn't comforting but oppressive, a reminder of what had been taken from me. As I started to settle back into the house, I found a letter tucked inside one of Grandpa's old books. His handwriting was unmistakable, and my hands shook as I unfolded it.
Mia?
If you're reading this, I hope it means you've found your way back home. This house is more than just bricks and mortar. It's a symbol of strength and resilience. Our family built this from nothing, and it's yours now. But remember, Mia, a home is only as strong as the people within it. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, but it does mean finding peace. Don't let anger consume you. Use your strength to create a life you're proud of. With all my love, Grandpa. I sat there for a long time, the letter clutched in my hands. Grandpa had always been wise, but his words felt especially poignant now. Could I forgive them? Could I ever let go of the anger burning inside me? A week later, Aunt Susan showed up at the house. I almost didn't answer the door, but curiosity got the better of me. She looked nothing like the confident, smug woman who had thrown me out. Her hair was disheveled, her clothes wrinkled, and her eyes red-rimmed. "Mia," she said, her voice trembling. "I know I'm the last person you want to see, but I need to talk to you." I crossed my arms, leaning against the doorframe. "Talk? About what?" "How you betrayed Grandpa's trust. How you stole everything from me." Her face crumpled, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "I know I've done terrible things," she said, her voice cracking. "But I'm asking for your help. Mark and Lisa are in trouble. The fines, the court fees, it's too much. We're going to lose everything." I stared at her, stunned by her audacity. "You're asking me for help? After everything you did to me?" She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Please, Mia. I'm begging you. I don't know what else to do." I closed the door without answering, my heart pounding. Part of me wanted to let them suffer, to watch as their lives crumbled around them the way they had tried to destroy mine. But Grandpa's words echoed in my mind. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, but it does mean finding peace. I spent the night wrestling with my decision. Could I forgive them? Did they even deserve forgiveness? The next morning, I called Mr. Collins for advice. "Legally, you owe them nothing," he said. "But this isn't just about the law. It's about what kind of person you want to be." I called Aunt Susan and asked her to come back to the house. She arrived with Mark and Lisa in tow, all of them looking defeated and desperate. "You want my help?" I said, standing tall in the living room that had once felt so oppressive.
"Fine.
"But there are conditions." They nodded eagerly, like drowning people clinging to a lifeline. "First," I said, "you will publicly apologize for everything you've done. Every lie, every betrayal. You will own up to all of it." Mark opened his mouth to argue, but Susan silenced him with a glare.
"Done," she said.
"Second," I continued, "you will repay every cent you stole from Grandpa's charities. I don't care how long it takes." Lisa whimpered, but Susan nodded again. "And finally," I said, my voice hard, "you will stay out of my life.
Permanently.
This is your one and only chance to make things right. If you ever cross me again, I will destroy you." They agreed, their heads bowed in shame. True to their word, my family issued a public apology. The media ate it up, and for a moment, I felt a flicker of satisfaction. They were finally facing the consequences of their actions. But my focus wasn't on them anymore. I had spent too long consumed by anger and pain, and it was time to start building a life that Grandpa would be proud of. I threw myself into restoring the house, turning it back into the warm, welcoming home it had once been. I started volunteering at Grandpa's old charities, using the inheritance to help others the way he always had. It wasn't easy, but over time, the anger began to fade. I still didn't trust my family, and I doubted I ever would. But I no longer felt the need to punish them. I had won, and that was enough. Grandpa's words stayed with me, guiding me through the toughest days. I knew he would have been proud of the woman I was becoming, strong, compassionate, and unyielding in the face of adversity. Months passed, and the house transformed under my care. The cracked paint on the walls was replaced with vibrant colors. The garden Grandpa had cherished so much began to bloom again, its once wilted flowers standing tall, just like I was learning to do. Every room carried a memory, but instead of sadness, those memories now brought me comfort. I started keeping a journal, filling its pages with my thoughts and dreams for the future. Grandpa's words had lit a spark within me, reminding me that my strength came not from vengeance, but from perseverance. One day, as I was sorting through boxes in the attic, I stumbled upon an old photo album I hadn't seen before. Inside were pictures of Grandpa in his younger days, smiling alongside people I didn't recognize. At the back of the album, there was a handwritten note. To my dearest Mia, these are the people who shaped me into who I am. Never forget that the people who love and support you will be your greatest strength. Surround yourself with those who lift you up. Love always, Grandpa. Tears welled in my eyes as I realized that while I had lost Grandpa, I hadn't lost his wisdom. His words reminded me that I didn't have to face the world alone. Inspired by Grandpa's note, I reached out to some of the people who had been important to him, old friends, former colleagues, and neighbors. To my surprise, they welcomed me with open arms, eager to share their memories of him. One of them, a woman named Martha, became a fast friend. She had been Grandpa's closest confidant and told me stories about his generosity and strength. He was always talking about you, she said one evening over tea. Said you were the best thing that ever happened to him. Hearing that was like a balm to my soul. For so long I had felt alone, but now I realized that I was part of a larger legacy, a community of people who cared about me because of the person Grandpa had raised me to be. Despite my attempts to move on, my family wasn't entirely out of the picture. One evening, Mark showed up at my door. I was immediately on guard, but his demeanor surprised me. He looked defeated. I know I'm the last person you want to see, he said, his voice heavy with regret. But I need to talk to you. I crossed my arms. What do you want, Mark? More apologies. No, he said quickly. I just want you to know I'm sorry. For everything. I didn't realize how much Grandpa cared about you, how much you meant to him. We were wrong. I was wrong. His words caught me off guard. For years, Mark had been arrogant and cruel, always taking what he wanted without a second thought. But now, he seemed genuinely remorseful. I don't expect you to forgive me, he continued, but I want to make things right. I've started paying back the money to Grandpa's charities. It's not much, but it's a start. I stared at him, trying to gauge his sincerity. Part of me wanted to slam the door in his face, but another part, perhaps the part shaped by Grandpa's wisdom, wanted to believe him. I'll be watching, I said finally. One misstep, and you'll regret it. He nodded, gratitude flickering in his eyes. Thank you, Mia. Mark's visit stirred something in me. If he could begin to change, maybe there was hope for the rest of them, too. I decided to let go of the bitterness I had been carrying. It didn't mean I trusted them or wanted them back in my life, but I was tired of letting my anger define me. I poured my energy into Grandpa's charities, using the inheritance to expand their reach. One of the projects I launched was a scholarship fund in his name, providing opportunities for young people who had been overlooked or underestimated, just like I once was. One day, while visiting one of the charity events, I met a young woman named Sophie. She reminded me of myself, lost, unsure, but full of potential. She told me about her struggles and how she felt like the world was against her. I shared my story with her, leaving out some of the darker details. Her eyes lit up with hope as I told her about overcoming betrayal and finding strength within myself. You're stronger than you think, I said, echoing Grandpa's words. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Over the next few years, the scholarship fund grew, helping hundreds of students achieve their dreams. Every success story felt like a tribute to Grandpa, a way of honoring his belief in me and in the power of perseverance. My house became a home again, filled with laughter and life. The garden bloomed brighter than ever, and the walls echoed with the joy of the community I had built around me. Meanwhile, my family's fortunes continued to decline. Their once grand lifestyle crumbled under the weight of their scandals and debts. Susan eventually sold her mansion, and Mark and Lisa were forced to take ordinary jobs to make ends meet. I didn't gloat over their misfortune. Instead, I felt a strange sense of closure. They had reaped what they had sown, and now they were living the consequences of their choices. Years later, I received a letter from Aunt Susan. She wrote about her regrets, her mistakes, and her desire to make amends. She asked if we could meet, not to ask for help, but to apologize in person. I agreed, though I wasn't sure what to expect. When she arrived, she looked older, frilier, and humbled. We sat in the garden, and for the first time, she spoke honestly about her actions. "I let greed blind me," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I lost everything because I couldn't see what really mattered. I'm so sorry, Mia." Her apology didn't erase the past, but it was a step toward healing. Over time, I allowed small connections with my family to rebuild. I kept them at arm's length, but I no longer felt the need to shut them out entirely. The anger that had once consumed me was replaced with a cautious peace. As the years went on, I realized that the greatest revenge wasn't destroying my family, it was thriving despite them. I had taken what they tried to steal from me and turned it into something beautiful, something Grandpa would have been proud of. Standing in the garden one evening, I looked up at the sky and smiled. Grandpa had given me more than just a house and an inheritance. He had given me strength, wisdom, and a legacy of kindness. And in honoring that legacy, I had found myself. The battles I fought had shaped me, but they didn't define me. What defined me was what I chose to do with the life